started out selling crack before I started selling weed.
Mm-hmm.
I started out. I had a little job. I always kept a job when I was in high school, and when my parents separated, it really wasn't enough, and I was really trying to help out around the house and whatnot. And I had I guess I'd say kind of like a mentor guy that was a little older than me, and he was like, "Hey man, you want to make some money? This is how you got to get in."
Welcome to the podcast where we talk about cannabis.
Community violation. Code Green Plant.
Hello and welcome to Code Green Plant. I'm your host, Christy Chanel, and I'm here with my co-host, Phoebe James. How are you doing, Phoebe?
I'm good, Christy. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. I'm a little excited.
Okay, yeah, I'm excited. We have a special guest today. I think we told you on one of our episodes, we might have a little bit of spice coming up soon. And I think this is just going to be, I'm excited to hear from him and hear what he can bring. But this is a person who's been in the illicit market, underground drug dealing business for over 30 years now. And he's going to come on and, we kind of prepped him a little bit, but we're hoping to get some really good info, how he started to where he is now and how the drug game's changed and, hear a little bit outside of just marijuana.
I think it's a way for our audience that doesn't know anything about this and just hears on the news what's happening. It's a great way to get inside the mind of somebody who's been out there, who knows what's happening, who can put rumors to rest.
Well, he'd be considered like an OG in the streets. He's been around a long time. So, that's... not everybody can get to that status.
It's a really good interview. I'm excited to share it with you.
Yep.
Roll
Enjoy.
the clip.
What's going on? Hey, how about we keep that name to ourselves? But I'm willing to give y'all any other information that y'all would like to talk about today.
That works for me.
How far do you want to go back?
Let's go back. So,
okay.
where were you raised? What state?
Detroit, Michigan. I am from the heart of Detroit, right? And when you hear all the stories about the ghetto and how bad it was, but also how cultural it was, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know it was that bad when I was growing up because our family was kind of well off a little bit, but that's why I had to contain my name because we were well off from being dealers. I come from a lot of dealers, you know what I'm saying? I started smoking 5th grade. However you're old around that age, I do remember it was 5th grade. Me and my buddies would, my uncles would listen to records and, listen to the old R&B's, all the, with the afros and the bell bottoms. But they would sit down in the basement and smoke. So when they would leave, he'd say, "Hey, I'll give you $1, $2 to clean up the basement after them," which included dumping the ashtrays. And that's how we started. Me and my little cousin, my little buddies, we would steal the doobies and we would smoke. But the funny thing about it is, I always tell people I started smoking when I was in the 5th grade, but I didn't technically get high or fall in love with weed until my freshman year in high school. So I kind of played around with weed as a kid, maybe 3 or 4 years, and not to draw out the story, but I was riding with a buddy one day, and we was leaving football practice, and he was like, "Fire the joint up." And like I said, I had been smoking for years, per se, thinking I was. And he started laughing really hard at me, and I was like, "What's going on?" He was like, "Dude, you ain't smoking. You ain't even inhaling. You just playing." And I'm like, "Well, I am." So I inhaled, and I never forget, and that's when the love affection was born. I remember just being so blowed, so high, just feeling so great. And besides few times here and there in my life, I've been a smoker ever since.
You come from a family, you said that they were kind of well off. Did your parents, did they stay together? Did you grow up in a full, a complete household?
When I grew up in Detroit, I was living with my grandmother. My parents, my dad, he was a deadbeat or whatever, but I did have a stepdad, and my stepdad and my mother and my sister, they moved to Texas maybe when I was 6 or 7, maybe. They moved to Texas, and I stayed in Detroit all the way until junior high. And when they got separated and divorced, that's what led me to start the hustle part of it. selling drugs. Maybe my sophomore year or somewhere around in there.
Where did sales come in? Like, when did that start to come into play?
About 10th or 11th grade. And I started out selling crack before I started selling weed.
Mm-hmm.
I started out, I had a little job. I always kept a job when I was in high school. And when my parents separated, it really wasn't enough. And I was really trying to help out around the house and whatnot. And I had I guess I'd say kind of like a mentor guy that was a little older than me. And he was like, hey, man, you want to make some money? This is how you got to get in. And so I kind of debated about it because I still had like football dreams of, playing college football and all this and everything. So I was kind of, that ain't really for me. And I had really good grades. So I was kind of, trying to dibble in and dibble out. And then a guy, okay, I'll tell you a funny story. A guy who, the first guy I started hustling and selling crack for, we'll just call him Big Mike. Well, Big Mike, he would pay us $20 on 100. And I'm pretty like a money guy, you would say. At a young age, I started that, and I was like, man, we're turning in $4,000 or $5,000 a day for this guy. You know what I'm saying? And he's giving us crumbs. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I knew another older guy who used to hustle, who used to let me come by his house sometime. We play dominoes and stuff, and I would see how he was hustling. And I'm like, what he's paying and what he's selling, we're selling way more and getting way less. And I started kind of talking to the other guys who were working, and I think it was probably maybe about a week later, I came from school and I came to do my little shift I think I was a lookout guy or something then. And he was like, I don't want you around here no more. I'm like, what? I'm like, what's going on? He's nah, you're too enterprising. You think you gonna run stuff. You try to because I had started telling the other guys, hey, we should save all our money. And I know a guy that we could scope for. We can do this ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't want me around, so he fired me. And that was the end of I went to work at Target and Burger King. That was the end of my drug career for a few years.
So how old were you at that time frame?
15.
Okay.
15,
my son's age.
16. Yeah. And that was, but see, I grew up in the crack era. So, like, that was the big thing to sell drugs. That was the get rich dream in the ghetto or whatnot. And we didn't start selling marijuana until maybe I was about 19 when I got out of high school. 18. I always smoked, but I didn't start indulging until I met a Hispanic dude one day by chance, and we just started talking. And he was just like, hey, weed's the way. I could throw you a whole lot of weed, you know what I'm saying? Y'all are already doing this, doing that or whatnot. Y'all need to incorporate this. And that's when I went into the world of sales and marijuana.
So you said you started in crack. Now, is crack it's cheaper to make, and so you get more money? Is that why you started there? Because it's an easier turnaround and make more money? And then marijuana is harder?
Yeah. Not now, but then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like I said, this was crack epidemic. This is when late 80s, early 90s, when the crack was booming, and it was super cheap and it was super turnaround, Mm-hmm. And to a kid, you're looking at a teenage kid back then, like I say, maybe 90, 91, where you could take $50, buy a $50 rock, and then you could break it down and make $200,
Yeah.
I'll never forget my senior year, right before, maybe a week before graduation. I always remember this is one of the days that led to me being a lifelong hustler. I had went and picked up my report card, and they said, hey, you're graduating, y'all are walking, whatever, da, 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 da. And I don't know what made me do it, but I went to my job and I quit my job. And I went and bought $100 worth of crack. I'll never forget, me and my homeboy. And we sat out there all night. And I'll never forget, when I went home in the morning time, I had made $486. And to an 18-year-old kid, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In 91, that was a lot of money to make in one night.
I mean, I'll take it now. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led to my love affair with the hustle. That
Did
and the movie New Jack City.
New Jack City? Okay. Okay.
But it
So,
wasn't the. Now let me explain. It wasn't the movie. It was the movie. It wasn't the content of the movie. It was actually that. Like I said, at that time I would keep a job. I had hustle. I always kept me a little nice car. And behind Redbird Mall, they used to have movies. And when all the good movies would come out, all the drug dealers at the time, all the hustlers and everything would go to these one movies. And I never forget, me and my partner was on a date with these two girls when New Jack City came out. And I was just amazed. I was just so in love with all of the fancy cars that pulled up. And then, like I said, these is the 90s when these guys were wearing big dookie robes, big chains, rings on every finger. And I just, watching the movie with them talking about selling dope, then actually seeing all the drug dealers and everything all outside hanging out, all the pretty girls. And I remember we were going home and I told my homeboy, I said, "Say, I'm gonna be a drug dealer." He was like, "Man, get out of here."
they
He was
glamorized
like,
it.
"Man, you tripping, bro. We gotta go to school in the morning." I was like, "I'm telling you, I'm gonna be a drug dealer." And that was my fascination and love. $436 and New Jack City led to a life of dealing.
Did you ever try your product? Crack
Always.
or marijuana?
Well, no, okay, let me take that. Rewind. I've never tried crack. I've never tried crack. I've always smoked marijuana. Even when I was in prison, I smoked marijuana. You know, it's people like, well, you didn't smoke when you were in prison. I smoked when I was in prison. I smoked when I was on a monitor. You know what I'm saying? I had a monitor that I was not supposed to be doing anything wrong, and I was still smoking. So I've always been in love with marijuana. But I've, through the years, when you're hustling, you come in contact with these different drugs or whatever, and they go through phases. You know what I'm saying? Like when we were growing up, we went through a phase when we were snorting powder. That was the cool thing to do. You know, everybody was doing it. Went through a phase where we were drinking syrup. You know, went through a phase where we were popping X pills. You know, but I never tried crack. I never tried heroin. You know what I'm saying? But or fentanyl. But anything besides that, you know what I'm saying? One time or another, I probably did within it, or the people around me.
Okay, so before we get into the prison, let's go back a little bit and talk about, did you ever feel in danger? Was there ever a time where you were like, this is really unsafe right now?
I have been shot on 3 different occasions, stabbed once, beat with a bat. Yeah, I've been through the real.
Can you give me a story? Can you pick one and just give me a story?
One time, I was doing pretty well for myself, and my partners, we were doing pretty well for myself. And just to short the story, I was dealing with a guy out of town, and he had a sister that was from my neighborhood, and he would come out of town, and his sister hooked me up with him or whatever. And for some reason, I didn't peep this day. Everything was going different than normal. He would normally call and say when he was coming, but he didn't. His sister called, and she was like, "Hey, my brother coming. He wants you to have this." I'm like, "Cool. All right, let me know when he get here." She was like, "Well, y'all should be over here ready for him when he gets over here." I'm like, "All right." So then another one of my partners called. He was like, "Hey, she called and said she needs some stuff over there." And I was like, "Well, why would she call you and me? And her brother hasn't called?" Then so I was kind of a little weary. But then she told me, she was like, "This girl that I had been liking on, she's going to be over here. We're going to be partying. You know, everything come over there." Long story short, we get over there. We're partying. And we get in. A friend of mine was leaving out of the house to go to the store. When he ran back in the house, and he was like, "Hey, man, y'all, these guys we had been into it with were outside in the parking lot. We went outside, had a big fight or whatever. We was running around, acting crazy. We went back in the house. She comes in, she says, "Hey, give me y'all guns and everything. I'm going to hide them because I think the laws are about to come." And so we do that. I'm sitting in the room smoking a joint with my partner. All of a sudden, I hear a boom, boom, boom. I'm like, "What is that?" He said, like, "Okay, let me go to the front and see." So he walks to the front. That's when I hear gunshots. Pow, pow, pow. I'm like, "Oh, my God." I jump to the ground. I'm trying to figure out what to do because I don't have any gun because she took everybody in the house's gun. And at the time, there's like 5 guys and like 3 chicks in the house. So I get up to go see what's going on. My partner runs through the room. There's a guy chasing him with a gun, pushes him out the window. So I'm like, what is going on? He shoots at my partner a couple times. So I try to run out the door. As I'm trying to run out the door, we tussle. Another one of the guys that was with him grabbed me, threw me on the ground. They start kicking me and stuff. So I'm like, okay, they want to fight. I can fight. That's cool. When I try to get up, that's when he shot me. He shot me 5 times.
Wow.
They ended up coming in and shooting a chick. They shot me 5 times. They shot my partner 3 times, threw him out the window. And it was all because I didn't realize at the time until I was in the hospital. And one of the girls came to see me and she was like, I can't believe she did you like that. And it was just like deja vu. I was like, wait a minute. It was a setup. And she was like, yeah. She go with the other dude. She was like, you didn't know that? And I had been in the hospital maybe 2 weeks and didn't know. I just thought it was random because we had been enemies with these guys. But apparently she had been dating my best friend and dating one of the enemy guys. And he had told her to set us up. But my partner ended up seeing them, and that's how we ended up having to fight pre the shooting. But they were already coming to shoot us and rob us.
You know, I do want to say my uncle was set up. He was murdered, and so he actually didn't make it, though. We can get into that in another episode. But yeah, so it reminds me, I'm hearing the same type of stuff. I'm reading the transcripts from the court and all of that stuff, and he was shot, and the girl was shot, and you know they were the whole thing. So you're very lucky that you actually survived that, and I'm surprised you stayed.
It didn't affect me like you would think it would. Like you said, you would think any sane person would have said, hey, I almost lost my life. I mean, I couldn't even walk for like 2 months. They would have said, I'm turning around, I'm going to do something different. But honestly, it made me go harder. It made me get deeper, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So now do you carry, and if they ask you, is that a normal thing when you walk in to say, let me have all your guns for safety? Is that like...
No.
Okay. So that's a trigger.
There were so many signs and triggers that day that I should have caught that I did it. That was one, definitely. And it was weird because one thing about me at the time, I mean, not to stray from the subject, but I was a gangbanger also. So I never was without my gun. You know what I'm saying? I never was without my gun. And to give somebody my gun was crazy. Even my mother was like, why you didn't have your gun, babe, when I was in the hospital? Because she would get so mad when she used to hug me and be like, why are you always carrying a gun? I'd be like, for my protection, my protection. And I didn't have a gun that day.
Let's go back. So you went to prison. Does this have anything?
Yes.
Do they tie together? Selling?
Yes. My whole life and all of that was, I just was, at that point, I was just crazy into the streets. Like, I was crazy into the streets. And
how old were you at this time?
20.
Okay.
I actually went into prison when I was 21 years old. I had 13 cases. And they finally said, no, you know, you're not paying the lawyer no more. We're tired of this. You're going to prison. I had multiple drug cases.
Basically, it was a stack. They stacked up, and that's really what did you in, right? It wasn't just one multiple, specific.
I had been on probation for one thing, and got caught with a gun here, got caught with a gun and some pounds here, and just all type of cases. I was crazy when I was a youngster. If you get caught with the drugs with a gun, it's an automatic chance that you go federal. I was blessed to be able to escape the feds. They never really messed with me. But anytime when you get caught with drugs and a gun, it's bad. It's bad. But when you've been shot 3 different times and shot at I don't know how many times, you really kind of balance it out. Like, I'd rather live than worry about, you know what I'm saying, getting caught with a gun or whatnot.
Yeah, and as you get older, you get wiser. So then you get a little bit more paranoid because you know what can happen and what the results could be. What's going on now in your life? Are you still selling?
I don't know, but I've just recently quit. I just recently slowed down, quit maybe about a year and a half ago. Yeah. To where it just got to where, for one, the oldest phrase in the game is, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. I can't do no big time no more. I'm too old for that. I don't want to be bothered with that. And the dynamics of the game just changed so much. Just the rules of the game just changed so much to where it just got disgusting to me. Like, it literally, like, there's no loyalty, there's no respect. There's, like I said, I started hustling in the late 80s. And, like, the way that it's going to now, it's just insane. It's just, like, it's hard to explain, like, the level of respect that we had when we were growing up to the lack of level of respect of, you know what I'm saying, now. For example,
Why?
just to give you when we were growing up, watching the older drug dealers growing up in Detroit, heroin was really big. If a guy got a bad batch of heroin, he immediately took it off the streets. Whether he took a loss, whatever. If he had something that was out there that wasn't good, he didn't want to sell it. Now you have guys who will lace heroin with fentanyl, not caring who ODs. They could care less.
What do they gain from
As long
that,
as they
though?
make that money.
Right.
What is the point? Why are they doing it?
I mean, because it's because of money, but
they're not
they
buying
just look past the
fentanyl.
morality of it.
Yeah, but okay, so you have some weed and somebody laced it with fentanyl. Are they selling it that way? Are they saying, hey, this has fentanyl in it? Or is it a surprise?
Okay, so the fentanyl conversation, like, would lead us down a whole nother rabbit hole, because I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
When we're hearing recently of fentanyl being added to marijuana, and I said this to somebody the other day, and they noticed, they was like, really, that's interesting. I feel like it's propaganda. And this, in a briefing, this is why I say this.
Mm-hmm.
Fentanyl just got really popular. People don't know, fentanyl was created in 1959. It's a synthetic form of opiate heroin. It was supposed to be a better heroin or a better morphine. We all know that that's a downer, and it brings you down. So recently, when somebody sitting somewhere realized, I can mix fentanyl with any other opiates and make them stronger. From what they say, 2 grams of fentanyl has the same potency as a kilo of heroin.
Wow.
And they can get a bad kilo of heroin and say, add a gram to it, and it instantly makes it a good key of heroin.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can take 1,000 Oxycontins and then add a gram, break them all down, add a gram to them, and it'll make them super potent. Okay. And what makes the epidemic part of it, the fact that the powers to be or the government don't know, is once the fake pills started coming out with the fentanyl, people's bodies started getting accustomed to the fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And not accustomed to the regular Oxycontin, hydrocodone, whatever bars or whatever that pills they would take. Percocets, they put them in Percocets a lot. And the rappers made Percocets popular. So now everybody wants to pop Percocets, and when they get fake ones, they're really, really high because of the fentanyl. So then when they run across somebody with some real ones in a prescription, they're not as potent. So now everybody wants the fakes because they're more potent. Okay. But they're supposed to be fentanyl is supposed to be added to opioids, downers. To me, in my frame of mind, it doesn't make sense to add fentanyl to coke or weed. But you've been having a lot of ODs come up of people who are saying fentanyl, there's been fentanyl in the coke. But what they're not telling you is a lot of people mix the fentanyl coke with the heroin or whatever because they want a speedball. Mm-hmm. They're making it seem like now the fentanyl is coming up in all drugs. It doesn't make sense to put fentanyl and coke. They counter-react each other unless you're looking for that effect. And there's people like who does the speedballing or whatever, where they do an upper and a downer, you know what I'm saying, to go up and down. But a normal person using coke or say ecstasy or whatnot, They're looking for a party. They're looking to be higher. When you add fentanyl, it's going to make them sleepy. It's going to make them nod. It's going to make them that. It doesn't make sense unless that's the high that you're looking for. And now that they're saying that they're adding it to weed, it would be so strong because weed already makes you sleepy. It would make you so high off of this weed. You know what I'm saying? And it would have to taste. It would have to change the taste. It would have to change the burn because it's powder form. And when you add a powder form, I don't understand how they can add a powder form of a drug to marijuana without the taste, the texture, everything changing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think that they've
it's
done
noticeable.
is, yes, it would have to be noticeable.
Okay.
But what I think that with the current epidemic and they're trying to get this strong fight against opiates, that they're trying to mass scare us. And I think it's propaganda. I think that they're just like the fentanyls and everything, just to make America's number one enemy. If that makes sense.
And also it legitimizes legalizing it and makes them money because now people are scared to go underground. Yes. Okay. That is the best definition. And you should be scared
because it's like the people that's on street level doesn't or don't know how to mix. And that's what gets scary.
Going back, you were saying that there, you had respect. The OGs had respect, and if they saw something bad, they would pull it. And now they don't give a shit.
No.
It's pretty much what you're saying.
I think half the guys just don't know what they're getting. And I just recently was in contact with some young guys who came across, we'll just say they came across a kilo of fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And they did not know what they had or what to do with it. They thought they knew, but they really didn't, and that was bad. Because, like I said, they don't know how to mix it. They don't care who they sell it to, it's bad.
And that's what's happening. Although we don't know 100% that they're really putting this fentanyl in marijuana, we do know that it is out there, and some people could get a hold of it and not know what the hell to do with it, therefore selling that shit.
And see, it's crazy because, like, I can say right now, if I was in the downers, I was in the opiates, I could roll me a blunt and me and a friend or something, if we smoked a blunt, I'd just say we just had some fentanyl or we broke some fentanyl up in it. And they would say, okay, he died from right before he smoked a blunt laced with fentanyl. It's because we laced it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no way that you can hand me a blunt and I could hit it, which I don't smoke with other people. But if it was just in an occasion, the smell, the taste, the texture, something has to be changed to where you would like, this doesn't taste right or this doesn't smell right. You know what I'm saying? You sit here and added a chemical, you know what I'm saying, to the marijuana.
But teenagers may not know the difference. If they're out there and they're at a party and they're like, hey, you want to smoke? They may not have, and they're smoking this thinking it's the way it's supposed to look and the way it's supposed to taste. So that may be where the problems are coming in. They don't know the difference.
It could. Mm-hmm. And I think that has happened a lot. But I just think how they've been introducing it in the media lately, I just don't think, because like I said, I stay tapped into the streets. Even though that I haven't been hustling real tough, I still stay tapped into. I talk to the hustlers and dealers every day. Mm-hmm. And it just hasn't came up, But it may be because we're in Texas, because I know my cousin, what we're dealing with fentanyl right now, my cousins in Detroit was dealing with 3 years ago. Huh. It was already an epidemic in Philly, New York, Detroit, those cities like that up north. We're behind this far, I just was joking with a friend the other day. I'm like, I've always tried to be a tough guy, not a bully, but I just never was scared of nothing or nobody. Taking a walk through my neighborhood the other day and seeing a lot of the guys who do fentanyl. It was maybe about 10 of them. It was so bad. I literally felt fear. And if you know me, like I never fear fear. I'm never fearful of anything, especially not in my neighborhood where I grew up. Everybody knows me. But these guys were so high they didn't even know who I was or recognize who I was, or didn't give a damn or didn't care. And I literally was like, these dudes will do anything, you know what I'm saying, to get, they sleep outside in 107 degrees. They tough. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you sleep outside in 107, you're on a different level, you know? And these guys, like, it's overtaken. I see some cats that I knew that grew up with my son, and like, dude, you addicted to fentanyl, you like gave up your whole life, you sleeping outside behind this stuff. Like, it's really an epidemic. It's taking over, like, really, really bad.
This episode of Code Green Plant was sponsored by Simply Vibin LLC. Code Green Plant is a Simply Vibin production hosted by Christy Chanel along with her co-host Phoebe James. This podcast is not intended to be used for medical advice and is solely the opinion of the host. Please consult your physician. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Want more? Visit www.simplyvibin.com. And a special thank you to the core group of people who helped with the creation of the Code Green Plant podcast. We appreciate you simply vibing with us.
Code Green Plant. Shh.